But speaking of play rate, I'm tired of talking theoretical. Let's get match as those players are ready to go. We're going to be
got curious. Beta Giant Growth, only $30. That's not bad.
That's not bad at all. Honestly, worth, we are going to be watching from Sacha's perspective here on blue-white versus Méndez on mono-red aggro. And Jerry, what is Sacha really looking for as we're looking at her opening hand here in this kind of matchup?
Well, mono-red aggro is it's accurate, but it's also kind of a misnomer because this is very different than a traditional mono-red aggro deck, how you might think of it. Like, for example, this deck has no copies of Monstrous Rage, which we were talking about beforehand. Instead, Méndez is playing 4 copies of Herbrest's Forge main deck. So it isn't as simple as just, get a temporary lockdown, some cheap spot removal, maybe some life gain that'll insulate you enough for your more powerful cards to take over. Like, you do still have to do that, but then you have stuff like Herbrest's Forge that you also need to deal with.
Yeah, and you see Sacha there on her mulligan to 6, thinking about, cards like Herbrest. This is open decklist with being a extreme tournament there, and decides to keep one of those March of the Worldly Lights. And we're going to see a Mountain of Pass and then a Restless Land and Pass as well.
Yeah, you might normally think No More Lies on the draw against mono red maybe is too slow, but when you know that your opponent has 4 copies of this very powerful 3-drop, suddenly that's one of your most important cards.
Yep. And we are going to see that be held up here on turn number 2 after Charming Scoundrel came down and knocked Sacha down to 18. And speak of the devil, Jerry.
There it is. There's the Forge. No More Lies at the ready. And that is basically the perfect, cleanest answer you could possibly have at this point. And also makes me wonder if Méndez maybe just has another one waiting in the wings.
Yeah, Méndez might be in a position where it's like, well, if you respected my deck, I'm just going to have this this is going to be answered. And if you didn't, I'm going to run you over the Herbrest Forges. Those are going to see a land in the pass of the turn. Expecting a lot of that as this game's go on. And a little Sokensen channel. All right.
23 lands in this mono red deck, 3 Mishra's Foundry, 1 Mirrex, and 1 Sokensen. So a decent amount of utility, but that's not generally what you want to be doing on turn 4 with your red deck.
I was going to say, is that a sign of weakness, maybe, if you're Sacha thinking about what's going on here?
Maybe flooding out a little bit. I think playing the Forge on turn 3 either leads me to believe that is kind of Méndez's last spell, or that Méndez has a bunch of powerful threats. But when you follow it up with Sokensen, that might mean that the deck is kind of out of gas.
Yeah, and we're going to see a passing here as Charming Scoundrel comes on down. And Sacha has the all-powerful, the Wandering Emperor in hand. So any sort of, getting into combat this turn is going to be very dicey. And this is sort of the turn where blue-white takes over.
Yeah, this is exactly the spot that you don't want to be in as the red player, at least unless you have like an Herbrest Forge in play. But there really isn't a whole lot you can do in this scenario. If you just attack with the 1/1s, well, Emperor can just make a 2/2 and block potentially. And that's not great for you either. I think you do just have to attack with everyone here.
We see Sacha here go for the Mice and create a Samurai. What do you think's going on in her head there? She's going for the Samurai as the play.
Well, you could do the minus and take out the Scoundrel, but that leaves it at 1 loyalty, right? So it is vulnerable to the Kumano faces Kakazan. But like, this makes it 2/2. You get to take out one of the 1/1s and then either trade it with the 2/2 next turn. Or now you put a counter on it and now it's out of range. It just holds off everything. So I think you get more value off of doing this.
Yeah, it weirdly plays around. You would think that like killing something for sure and gaining 2 life against mono red, it's like, well, that has to be better. But, Sacha doing a great job here sort of playing around that, as we do see another Scoundrel get, No More Lies there. And you need to have No More Lies against the Scoundrel. They're just going to lie to you. As we see another counterspell there on the Witchstalker Frenzy and a 3/3 blocking.
Yeah, awkward for Méndez there, having to attack first in order to discount that Witchstalker Frenzy just to be able to cast it in general, and then running head first into the 3rd counterspell.
Yep. And we see Sacha here. She's taking a second to think. We kind of gotten the board stabilized a little bit. We have this Wandering Emperor. We know the Kamano token's coming down soon. And it looks like we're going to animate our land and attack in for 5, get a map, and then pop it on our new Samurai. And we hit a Deluge.
Interesting. I guess you maybe keep this. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
it's so tough, right? Like if you had 6 lands, you like snap Bennett probably and hope to just draw the land, but on 5, it's so awkward.
yeah, it is kind of weird, especially because Sasha is very clear that she wants to get this game over with as quickly as possible. And I think that that's the right call against the deck with 4 Breast Forge.
Yep. Yeah, and also we're only at 7 life, so while there isn't the most amount of reach here compared to maybe older formats if you play those, there's still some, so getting the damage in definitely counts. Oh, an all-out attack on the Wandering Emperor here.
Yeah, this makes sense. Either you force a trade on one of the samurais. Either way, the Emperor is going to die. But if you trade with the samurai there, you'd probably be fine. And seems like the attack, like what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Sasha's, not quite checkmated Méndez here yet, but has put them in a very awkward position.
Yeah, 7 life is a pretty good spot to be, especially when your mono-red opponent is hellbent. In terms of actual burn spells that you were talking about, there's 3 copies of Play with Fire and 3 lightning strikes, so not a ton.
Yep. As we do see Méndez draw for the turn. He's taking the think, and Godric is a strong card, but
yeah, not that strong when it's your last card. Unfortunately.
Yeah, we are going to see March of the World Light with it, the exiling a white card from hand to clear up the blocker, and that should dispel game Alejandro going down to Sacha in game number 1. Whew, that was a lightning fast one there, Jerry, as we head into sideboarding.
Yeah, Wandering Emperor allowed Sacha to turn the corner there very quickly.
Yeah, she kind of got to play that like Delverish game that, blue-white control hopes to play in the super late game, right? Like, hey, I've countered everything. One last thing with a couple answer spells, hope it's good enough. And she just got to start doing it on turn 4, and that has to be hard to beat. As we are seeing her kind of line up the card she wants to sideboard out. I appreciate that from the coverage standpoint.
Yeah, it's nice. Mm-hmm. Get a little glimpse into her thought process here, like looking to trim a lot of the clunkier cards, not touching those No More Lies. Those were kind of the all-star last game.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, is there anything in here that you think you might jump for? Obviously, we're going to see what Sacha does, and that might differ a bit. But we're seeing these Tidebinders come in. Do you like the idea of having that body? Anything like that?
Well, in terms of being able to close out the game quickly and doing a little bit to stop Breast Forge, Shauna's Tidebinder is pretty good at all of that. And the red deck does have a lot of incidental triggers with things like Bloodthirsty Adversary and whatnot. So Tidebinder looks good. It's just a solid card that can trade early also. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Dust Animus, I think, is kind of the slam dunk where you just end up with this big flying lifelinker, and there's not a whole lot that the red player can do about it. It is open deck list, so you get to see that your opponent has access to this thing, but like how many Witchstalker Frenzies do you actually want to keep in?
Yeah, right. And like how even upset is Sacha if you have, let's say, 3 of them, right? It's like, okay, you have 3 of this Witchstalker Frenzy. Well, if I don't have my Dust Animus, which, might be one of the only things you care about, outside of maybe an Breast Forge and Tidebinder situation, just a dead card in your hand and buys me time for my Wandering Emperor to take over. So we've seen how that played out. We saw a little bit of trimming of the card draw there from Sacha, and we're going to have to see how this goes as we start up game number 2 here, the first round of our top 8. Remember, these players, no matter what, I've got locked up some points for end of the year leaderboard. We're going to have 10 people invited and 6 at-large bids. And Jerry, what do you think of this opening hand here? It's kind of tempting.
It is tempting. The Wonder Emperor is very powerful, but this is a 5-lander on the draw against mono red with just a deduce. And I think that I could see shipping this like pretty easily, but I am also not a standard blue-white control player. So
that's fair. Yeah, I know that, our host of the stream, Nile, loves the deuce. She would maybe have been tempted. Who knows? But we do see Sacha there, not want to just, maybe get run over. A lot easier to have that one happen when you're on the play, right? And you can maybe lose a little bit, as we do see Commando his Kakusan come down and immediately deal that 1 damage. And Jerry, this 1-drop has been so impressive.
It's so good. Again, these red cards that have shown up in this deck are seeing play in a lot of older formats as well. They are very powerful.
Mm-hmm. And Feldon Excavator, a card that people were pretty high on when they first came around in standard, didn't do much and is now really seeing a lot of play. Comes down, gets an extra counter from Kamano, backs in for 3. And Jerry, I think our mana might be a little ruinous here.
Yeah, 3 Field of Ruins, already not a great start, but when your only colored mana source is an Adakar Waste, That's not great either. And then you're also sitting on No More Lies, which is a card that costs blue and white mana. So not great, but I do think that this type of hand is more likely to win you the game than the first hand that Sacha had.
Alejandro just attacks for 5. We're going to see Sacha cast Deduce at the end of turn. Picks up another No More Lies, but no mana for those lies. You're going to see a lightning strike as well, knocking her down to 7. And a Deserted Beach is the draw for the turn. So we're out of the mana issues somewhat.
I like Méndez's choice to lightning strike there when the shields were down. Now you're attacking for 5, kind of forcing Sacha to spend her mana proactively, like take the shields down just to like get one of these attackers out of the way.
Yeah, and we do see her flash and Tidebinder Mage. No removal spell there from Alejandro to answer it, but we do see Felden's ability trigger when it takes damage, exile that many cards, and you can play one of them until end of turn, and we hit that land we needed.
Yeah, finds land 3. That could be huge.
Yeah, and Urbrass Forge does come down post-combat. You know, if you're going to have it resolved, that is the way you want it to happen, but you prefer if it just wasn't involved.
I don't know. With your opponent at 5 life, does it really matter all that much?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Fair point. As we are going to see the Wandering Emperor come down, we do have to take 1 because of the Adhikar waste, but the Emperor is going to actually go for the minus this time. Seeing, you know, Sacha not just rely on heuristics, right? Last game we saw her pretty quickly make the token. This game pretty quickly went for the minus. You know, understanding the game states are very different than they were last time as Koth comes down and searches up a mountain from the deck.
I honestly don't even know what the rest of Koth's abilities are. I know it shows up a lot in these sideboards.
Yeah, it eventually does some damage. Basically, it's like, I believe, like landfall for mountains deal 4.
Yeah, it's an alt bot against blue-white, effectively. The -3 kills a creature. Yep. Wow.
Yeah, it's very funny that the mono red deck is like, no, this is my best Planeswalker pivot. As we are seeing Sacha here take a second to think about what she wants to do with the Emperor. Looks like we are going to cash in that Emperor for a token and then play our land tap and pass. Jerry, what does it need to look like for Sacha to get out of this one?
Trying to think. The farewell is gone. Correct.
I believe so. Yeah.
I can't really think of too much else outside of that, given what her hand is currently.
Yeah. We are going to see that Urbrask and hit, and we got little emotes going on. I like the idea. Which one are we going to hit Alejandro with before we end? All right, and another counter spell. We do have the ability to animate our land if we want to, you know, every turn counts, etc. But
send Koth a message.
Yeah, let them know. Also, could throw it under the bus. That is Urbrask Forge, and you know,
that is a legal play. Yes.
It's the winning play right now, Jerry. We're going to die if we don't.
Well, I wouldn't call it the winning play. It's the not losing play, but...
See, I'm a glass half full, you're a glass half empty, and that's okay. As we are going to see this Charming Scoundrel come down with plenty of mana to pay. Koth, you know, we joked about grabbing a land from the deck, but against No More Lies at this point in the game allows you to, you know, play around it or double spell.
No, it is great, and it is very threatening once it hits the battlefield. And Alejandro basically had the perfect setup to do just that this game, despite stumbling on missing land 3 for a little bit there too.
Mm-hmm. We're going to see the Wicked roll go on the Charming Scoundrel. That's going to basically guarantee a point of damage at some point. And I think we are dead. I might be missing something here.
No, this looks like 2 lethal threats with only 1 blocker.
It does look that way, and it is that way. We are going to get a game number 3 here with such a fast start there from the mono red deck. They're kind of curved out almost exactly like, obviously we stumbled on turn 3 with the lands, but had a consistent follow-up, and we're going to see Sacha here take a look at the battlefield and think to ourselves, is there anything we want to change up for game number 3? And Jerry, did anything jump out to you that maybe you want to switch it up with you on the play here?
I think the play and draw games are pretty different, where like for example, No More Lies looked pretty good in that game 1, but looked pretty poor in game 2 because the red deck was able to get out ahead, force the blue-white control deck to kind of like tap out when it didn't want to, and the No More Lies just sort of rotted in Sacha's hand. But now with Sacha on the play, that's less likely to happen. And I think that if she wanted to, she could take an approach where maybe she plays like a few more like slower, kind of grindier card advantage things because she's likely going to have a lot more time this game.
Yep. And speaking of time this game, we have a pretty nice opening hand if our opponent has a draw similar to game number 2 there. And yeah, Sacha's keeping.
Yeah, you can plot this Dust Animus, ideally temporary lockdown to clear up 2 creatures, and then you have a No More Lies for one of the more harder to deal with permanents, and maybe just hope that Dust Animus carries you.
Yeah, and we also just picked up the Tidebinder for turn, which is, a great way to stop the Airbreast Forge without having to spend a counterspell on it if you want to. So, kind of looking nice here so far. We have to see what Alejandro can do as Cemetery Gatekeeper is going to come down as a 3/2. No effect, though. Yeah, temporary lock down number 2 picked up.
3/2 first strike for 2. Mono red decks have certainly played worse cards than that in the past.
What a high for praise. As we're going to see Airbreast Forge come down and start getting in here. March of Otherworldly Light, another answer to the Airbreast Forge. In a spot like this, Jerry, what's going through your head when you have like 2 different answers that play totally differently against a card like Forge here?
I think Sacha is in a good enough spot to where she could potentially like take a hit from the first Forge token, keep up No More Lies to stop something like a Koth or another Forge. And if nothing threatening presents itself, then you can simply march the Forge at the end of turn. Or if on the next turn you wanted to like Tidebinder the Forge in case you didn't draw land 5 for Dust Animus or something, you could do that. Like Sacha has time.
Yeah, and we see Alejandro here, I think, doing a very smart play, just moving to combat here. He knows this is the turn where Sacha wants to cast cards like the Wandering Emperor, Memory Deluge, traditionally, right? These are the big turn on turn number 4 here. And so he's like, if you have that Tidebinder to stop my Forge, I'm going to maybe sneak in something like the Koth we saw in game number 2, as it looks like actually just Mistress Founder is going to be animated here before attackers.
I think if you're Sacha, you got to love seeing this. You're much more scared of Méndez just playing a follow-up spell, I think, than animating a land, especially with Sacha at 18 life.
I agree. Jerry, is this the weird, we're going to Tidebinder as a Stone Rain?
I think that is risky.
Okay.
That is certainly a play that you could do. I understand the appeal, especially if you suspect that your opponent is, missing land 4.
Yeah, and looks like we're going to go for it. Doing this instead of something like Field of Ruin, in order to, literally try to Stone Rain the opponent. And there is the Kamano follow-up with the Mountain, so well played from there from Alejandro, maybe tempting Sacha a little bit and something he didn't care too much about.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I was definitely not expecting that.
Yeah, and we are going to see Dust Animus come down as a 4/5, and if you're an Alejandro fan, you better hope he was expecting this one has some Witchtalker Frenzies in the deck.
Yeah, there are also some threatens hiding out there, but that's generally only good if your opponent's at a low life total. Like if you Twisted Fealty this thing and then just pass the turn, that doesn't get you very far.
Yeah. We are going to see Airbreast Forge activate.
I guess there's Lithomantic Barrage hiding out too in the sideboard, so that could do it.
Definitely could, as we do see Kamano come on down. He really wants to face Kakazan. And we're going to see the end of the turn, the Airbreast trigger. And yeah, there was no attack this turn, so this is a good turn to not have to worry about Witchtalker Frenzy. We can lower the shield on our No More Lies and answer this Forge. And Jerry, we kind of have the battlefield locked up. I mean, obviously, there are some 2/2s coming, but with your 4/5 lifelinker, you have to be feeling kind of good about that.
It definitely looks good for Sacha, but I don't think it's completely over. I mean, I was going to say that she needed to draw something like a Memory Deluge maybe to lock it up, and
Oh, did you not know it's just we keep the good ones on top around here? So,
Oh, I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
Like I said, hey, I'm not a blue-white control player.
Well, I'm not much one either, but I've been top decked enough in my life. The games I've kind of a little bit behind. Oh Lord, here comes the memory deluge. As we're going to see Dust Animus come in, and Sacha did pick up that land she kind of wanted, but unfortunately it was a tap land, so we are lowering the shield on old Dusty here for a turn.
Yeah, what is Koth just 1 for 1? It's like 1
mountains.
damage for each mountain or double?
I believe it is 1.
Yeah, it's number of mountains you control.
Yeah.
So I think that's okay. We're like, if you're in Sacha's seat, you know that your Animus is not necessarily going to die to Koth. If you do brick on that land drop, otherwise maybe tempted to hold open the memory deluge, or wait on the memory deluge to hold open No More Lies.
We are going to see a land off the top, and yeah, an animation of the Restless here, maybe going after Koth, maybe going after the face. We're going to have to see what she wants to do. She is just going to try and knock out this Koth right away.
Yeah, you know that the Dust Animus would die next turn anyway, so you might as well just take out the Koth, keep your Dust Animus alive.
Yeah, and notably here, we hit on the map, Jerry. So now we have a 5/6. That means, cards like the Witchtalker Frenzy we were talking about before, if we left some of those in for a card like this, it won't do anything.
Yeah, and it was pretty clear to me, at least, that Alejandro did not have one of those. And given that he now needs 2 of them, that seems very unlikely if he didn't have one to start.
Yeah, and we see Sacha going after the land once again. She hates land. She wants to blow them all up, as we're going to get hidden for 4 here, but the Wandering Emperor off the top as well. And you see how quickly she's moving to combat, and just immediately it's like, let's race,
Yeah, I like Sacha has the Memory Deluge in the graveyard, 7 mana available, has the Restless Anchorage available to activate, has Emperor plus No More Lies. Doesn't need to commit anything with her mana on her turn.
Yeah, and you see just how confident she's feeling. Animating that Restless is like, whatever, you have a Lightning Strike to kill it. I don't really mind. And then the Wandering Emperor coming down and answering up that Kamano token. And that's going to put her in a great spot. So we do see Alejandro cry. Ooh. That is an understandable moment of tears, as just getting absolutely beat down. What a great run from him. He is going to be walking away with a bunch of leaderboard points. We're going to have 3 more events this year before our invitational, so he's in a very good position to still make it, but not in a great position to win this game.
No, Dust Animus already on its own is pretty difficult to deal with, and once you get that counter on it, it's pretty close to lights out.
Yeah, Alejandro pays for the No More Lies. Looks like he is flooding out. Great play from him this game, by the way. Remember on that turn 4 where we saw the activation and, we got the Tidebinder traded for. Had things gone a little differently, that could have been, a very much a game-winning play. Didn't work out this time, but congratulations to him for making the top 8. And congratulations to Sacha. Moving on to our top, where we will be seeing her playing more Magic as the day goes on, Jerry.
My main strike against Azorius control in standard is that the games take too long. I'm a big fan of Sacha because she did not make it take long whatsoever. It was just, once you just hit that Dust Animus or the Wandering Emperor, immediately turn the corner, game's over in 3 turns. Love it.
Yeah, she did a great job, I think, of taking like a good amount of time in the early turns when things were developing. Like, okay, how do I want to sequence? And as soon as she knew she was ahead, she was just like pedal to the metal, 1 for 1 with me. Let's go. Let's see what you can do. I want to play this game. And congratulations to her. And I can't wait to see how she plays in the top 4. I'm going to see if we have any other top 8 matches still going, and maybe we can hop in and check out on one of those. We're going to have a backup feature match with Eddie Walker on Dimir, I believe, versus the 5-color Slogurk deck. So this would be pretty exciting. Jerry, you said you like Dimir. It's pretty close to your heart. How do you feel about this deck? And any thoughts on Vladimir New Blood, one of the more recent additions to this deck? Actually, the match is ready, so we're going to see how action. So we're
big fan of Vladimir, by the way.
Vladimir's nice. Full, disclosure, Eddie is actually my LGS owner, and I was talking to him yesterday, and he was pretty excited to play with Vladimir, and it's been working out for him, as we do see the end on Slogurk. And that's going to remove all that very hard-to-answer creature.
Yeah, I was going to say that this matchup it seems difficult for Dimir because the legends that can grind you out, and Slogurk is a massive part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the end on Slogurk was not something that I had really considered.
Yeah, and it looks like it's something that Dylan is going to have to figure out how we're going to fight through. As Honest Rustine's going to come down. Now, we do have this Titania. She has reach as a 3/4, so these bats are a little bit locked up. And it looks like we're considering cutting down Honest Rusty here, with Inti
Might as
being the
well.
target.
Did you see that big bow and arrow thing on the Titania?
Yeah.
It's like semi recent arena technology to be like, it doesn't look like this creature has reach, but trust me, it does.
Yes, yeah, it's a very nice one. And speaking of nice ones, when we tried to kill that Honest Rustine, we had Odawara bounce it back to our hand, Jerry. That's a lot of value.
It is a lot of value. It'd be more value if you had a Slogurk to go along with it, but that's probably not going to be happening this game. So you do what you got to do.
Sure. Yeah, and we are going to see a Cavern of Souls come down. So, both players know everything that's going on here. Honest Rustine's coming in. I believe it does have a Kinnan to pick up. And yep, we have Inti coming down as well on that discount rate. And it looks like we're just going to channel Takenuma for a single black. These Kamigawa channel lands continue to be a huge role player in Standard.
They're so good. Definitely underrated them. Turns out a lot of cards are just incidentally legends, such as Vadmir New Blood. And if you put a bunch of legends in your deck, those are all pretty cheap.
All right, we're going to see Eddie just pick up a Mirrex, pass the turn, get his Graveyard Trespasser, transform into the Glutton. Unfortunately for him, Dylan does have the Rona Inti engine going on. Well, we're missing Slogurk. We are still going to be able to move through our deck incredibly quickly as soon as we start attacking. It looks like Honest Rusty might be getting a little buffy. Coming down. It's going to trigger the Rona, which is summoning 6, so can't do anything quite yet. And yeah, this second, yeah, it's soon. And this is one of the things too about this deck, right? Some people are like, okay, well, like, what if I break up the Slogurks and the Relic of Legends? Like, if I get rid of those, it's not really a deck, right? And we're seeing this right now, like, still reasonable sad bodies with the threat of taking over the game very soon.
Yeah, the Legends deck still has 29 lands. A lot of them are very powerful utility lands. You have the Inti Rona engine, a lot of copies of things like Honest Rustine, and then there are also just things like Vorinclex at the top end, where it's like, maybe I'll just kill you with big legends,
Yeah, it plays a reasonable game here, and we are going to see an Odawara at end of turn on that Rona. So Eddie holding the cut down might get rewarded here. That Inti is going to trigger. It's going to hit another cut down. That is a rough place to be. So it does look like Eddie's just going to pass back to Dylan. Dylan's going to cast Cut Down still at the end of Eddie's turn, trying to get back that Honest Rustine. And yeah, that makes this Cut Down so much worse here for Eddie.
Yeah. Those bats were doing their best, but they will die eventually, if the game goes on long enough and you use a removal spell on the bat that had your removal spell and then kill the other bat, and suddenly you're just right back in it.
Yep. We're going to see the Relic of Legends we talked about before coming down. That's going to unlock a ton of mana here for Dylan.
So now what happens?
Yeah. And this is kind of the awkward spot, right? Because we are going to have to see what we can do here.
I guess you could just transform Rona. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to see Cut Down in response there from Eddie. They don't want this to happen. Vladmir's going to trigger the crimes. Get a little looting going on.
I wonder if maybe going for the Rona transform was a little premature with Dylan in the high 20s and could have just popped off with Rona Inti a little bit maybe first, but I don't think this is going to end up being too bad for her either way.
Yeah, I think she just withdrawing that Takenuma probably was like, oh, I can kind of like get whatever is left in Eddie's hand. And if they have nothing, then I get, this huge obliterator that takes over the game. So probably a position where it's like you said, we could have played longer, but we're leveraging our advantage here as we're going to cast another Rona. Creating a black here, using our Ronas like lotus petals. As cut down.
They have many uses.
Yeah. And, honestly, one of the big parts of this deck, right, is the fact that it generates all this mana and can have turns like this, as we do see Go for the Throat cast on the Vladimir. And he does have a Takenuma, so they can channel that to get it back. Eddie has some cards like Shieldred in the deck. That could be an out. Obviously, this engine is pretty wild, but, life totals are high.
Yeah, ideally with Dimir, you kind of need to stop the games from getting to this point. Like, you need to be putting your opponent under pressure. And with Dylan still just hovering at 29 life, like high 20s this entire game since we've tuned in, it's really difficult to put much of anything together. And there's no big source of card advantage in these decks. It's like you have to get on the board early, maybe get an advantage with stuff like Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor, but other than that, it's just efficient creatures and 1-for-1s.
Mm-hmm. We are going to say they have a nice turn there. Went for the Vadmir at the end of turn off the Takenuma, picked up a Hearse, but decided to play the old Bat to get the Rustine out of hand, as the Talarian Obliterator is transformed there for Rona, and Odawara is going to bounce the back to hand.
Oh no, I drew a land, but thankfully 10 of my lands are spells that kill things.
Yeah, and this is something that I know you've been a big proponent of in your content a lot, is like play more lands, and this Legends deck lets you do it with very little worries, because so many of them are spells like you were talking about before.
Yeah, and look at the mana costs that are in play. Titania, Rutstein, Inti, Kellen, Rona. It's just good to have like a 5-land opening hand to ensure that you can cast all your spells.
Yep. We do see Dreams of Steel and Oil. It's going to take that Unlicensed Hearse from the hand. And now, we're going to start attacking. Tough spot for Eddie to be in.
I think the best case scenario would be maybe something to just get that Titania out of the way and start attacking, maybe force some trades, try and end up in a racing situation. Eddie does have the Restless Reef in with the lands too, so like maybe that could help. But given that they missed on that turn, things are just looking rougher with each time you say go, because Dylan has like all this mana, this engine. It compounds so much after every turn.
Yep. Also, we have Illis just played. Now we are just one of many different cards away from essentially an infinite combo, which will drain Eddie out. And I believe Takenuma. You can't channel Takenuma from the exiling, correct? So
yeah, because you have to discard it. You can only discard stuff from hand.
Yep. All right, so
you can play it, make your land drop.
Yep. Kellen is going to be used to make some maps, start exploring. But yeah, Eddie has the Vladimir, which could, maybe start tussling, get in a race here. It will eventually gain lifelink as well, but with the Go for the Throw on top, it's just looking really tough here.
Yeah, and even if there wasn't a Go for the Throat on top and Dylan did need to find something, she has the ability to do that kind of at will. So
yeah, and the Obliterate attacks for 7. Eddie has the Odawara to bounce it, but I think by bouncing it, you actually unlock the infinite combo. Oh no, I'm sorry, you need the second Rustine is what was needed there. Sorry. So not quite dead. But the other one's just going to turn into the Obliterator.
That's fine. We'll just transform this other one.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost like Eddie just sort of, fogged the attack. Let's Go for the Throat is the draw for turn. This I think this opens up attacks with the Vadmir, but
It technically does. And, Vadmir also gets the counter and the life link, but does that win you the game? I don't think so.
yeah, I don't think so either. Let's go for the throat on the Vadmir. Eddie's taking a second, figuring out if they want to, maybe go for the throat something.
I think you have to wait for the Rona to attack, because otherwise the other one just transforms and attacks you.
Yeah, the sort of song and dance we keep having happen.
Yep.
And yeah, no cards in hand to discard. And we're seeing it, even though Eddie had the answer for the Gurk as soon as we got here, it just, wasn't enough to really like pull ahead and take an advantage. And just, slowly, incidentally, Dylan has ground Eddie into the dirt.
Yeah, the problem was that Dylan was already kind of stabilized, right? Like she was in the high 20s, had Titania holding off those bats and the Graveyard Trespasser. And so, okay, the Gurks are gone, but still have all these engine pieces, all this other powerful stuff that you can do. The deck is definitely not one-dimensional.
Yep. And a marsh off the top for Eddie. That is a tough place to be here. We're going to probably see Eddie try and fight through this. I mean, you can get your Restless Reef going in order to attack and, maybe start to hope to eat away at something, but it is a tough spot to be.
It does have Death Touch. Dylan has, I imagine, been tearing through her deck a little bit, but I can't imagine that the Reef is anywhere near lethal in terms of milling.
Yeah, I would guess our deck's probably in the 20s. It looks like it is at 19. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say 20s.
Yeah, it feels like this game went. I wonder if both players mulliganed actually a bunch, Jerry, because like we came in, the game was pretty late, and they were both pretty light on lands. So I wonder if like maybe we had some mull to 6 low land games. We'll never know, but very interesting to sort of see how this has progressed.
I think it could be that maybe the Dimir deck just had some interaction, some spot removal spells, and Dylan was working the Honest Rutstein angle and just kind of like fighting through all the little pieces of disruption and trying to actually get something profitable going rather than treading water. And once she stabilized, she's just able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're down to, 15 cards in deck, getting dangerously close. That Takanuma, not going to be able to do anything. I wonder, no, actually, you don't need Dirk for the combo. We still would have it if we ever picked up the other copy of it, I believe. As Kellen's going to come down. Legend rule. Get some drains in here.
So funny that lone Graveyard Trespasser is just kind of like holding off everything for right now, but
yep. We're seeing a pretty cool interaction there. We tapped our Takanuma for mana, played the Relic, and then Legend ruled, and then we gained 2 life from Titania since a land hit the graveyard from the Legend rule as Rona is going to transform.
So this Restless Reef with Death Touch could potentially be on blocking duty here. But again, just treading water.
It is, and I wonder, maybe Eddie has to take this. I wonder where the NT is going. It's probably on Titania, I would guess, but there it is.
You have to do that. Otherwise, one of the 4/4s just eats the Titania, and that's not really where you want to be.
Agreed. Rona off the top there. So we could always trade this Obliterator and get another Rona down. Might inform Eddie's decision some here. Yeah, I wonder if Eddie's just trying to set up the mill win, because I can't imagine a world where Eddie wins without milling Dylan. Like, I think she just has too much of a like stalled commanding position,
There would have to be some sort of sweeper involved, which I don't think exists.
Agreed. We're going to see the Merrick's activated. No value left on the table. Respect that. Gix is the draw for turn.
A little late.
Yep. But now Gix can attack because Titania's finally gone. The bat can get in for 1. Pay a life, cycle a card.
Yeah, but now Gix is the only blocker left. You're gonna, I guess you don't have to pay a life because the bat has life link. But you're facing down 6 creatures.
Yeah. I'm gonna be curious to see what Eddie wants to do. Eddie's just gonna pass. No attack here. Ooh. A land off the top, but a good land off the top. Let's see. Everybody comes on in. Anti triggers. Exiling another Anti. Is there any way to stay alive and come back in this? All right. Ellis is going to get blocked by Gix. Bat on the Rusty.
Yeah, 9 coming in.
Yeah, Plaza of Heroes is going to save the Ellis.
Guess you gain 1 back from the bat. Not nothing.
Yeah, and look, unfortunately for Eddie, this looks to be lethal unless we got down to 4 cards neck. But I think we're at like 9, so close, but not quite enough. As Eddie is going to take a leave there. Gradually, and she'll be moving on to our top 4 as well. Like we said before, Eddie and everyone else who made our top 8 are going to get points towards our end of the year leaderboard. So in a good position to make the run for the at-large bid, and had a good day and a good performance when it comes to payout as well.
Yeah, you get to spend the day playing a pretty solid standard format, presumably with a deck you enjoy playing. I hope so, at least. Like, standard is wide open enough that no matter what kind of player you are, there is something for you. And as you can see by this top 8 spread, kind of everything's viable.